Turns out your quote-unquote made in Italy luxury handbag might have more ties to Chinese factories.
The United States of America has imposed 145% tariff on Chinese imports.
Chinese manufacturers are now trying to sell high-end luxury goods like handbags directly to Americans on TikTok.
They're saying factories produce the same products for a fraction of the cost.
The profit margin for the people who are actually making the bags are very low.
The bag may say made in Italy, but it's quite possible that only the clasp was attached in Italy. The rest of the bag was made in China.
Although they outsource the production, they can't outsource all the risk of the conditions of the production.
Last Tuesday, I received a text message from my mum about some luxury handbag drama that is happening on TikTok. Without thinking much of it, I clicked the link and this is what I found.
Let's start with this lovely gentleman who, as you can imagine, is holding a Hermes bag. What he reveals is that they manufacture 85% of this and then send it to Italy or various other places. They put the logo and stamps and everything else on there and say it's from Italy. And he reveals everything and then goes and says this bag that is now sold in the USA for $30,000 is made for $2,000.
It took me some time, but with a bit of digging, I was able to identify that the original TikTok in this case was made by a creator called Senbags. Senbags is a creator who, at the time of recording this video, has about 6 videos on his account that all relate to creating handbags. And although the original video that you've seen in the reaction seems to have been removed from the platform, essentially most of his videos seem to be a rebuttal against Trump's tariffs. He seems to be wanting to shed some light on how manufacturing actually takes place at some of the most popular luxury houses. He talks about how leather bags are made in China, and he says without a stutter that his factories create Hermes bags and that these are shipped to Europe and stamped with a made in France stamp. What some of these Chinese creators are accusing these luxury brands of is called white labeling, when a company or the marketer purchases a generic product or service from another company or the producer and then rebrands it under their own name as if they developed it. Brands use white labeling all of the time in cosmetics, food, electronics, and even software. It lets companies offer a wide range of products without having to build factories, source raw materials, or handle complicated logistics. There are a few big reasons why white labeling is so popular. One being speed to market. You can launch quickly without starting from scratch. It's usually more cost effective, so manufacturing can be expensive, and outsourcing equals less risk. And scalability. If you're a newer company, you can always test the market before investing in your own products. But here, of course, we're dealing with brands who claim to either make their products in-house or in Europe, and or that they have stringent oversight of their supply chains, and so white labeling is not something that they are doing. It has been pointed out by some that the speed at which some of these luxury collections are released means that it would only be impossible that they are not outsourcing or white labeling their products, and so for many this scandal hasn't come as a surprise, and in fact only works to confirm what they already believe to be true. Now, this is not a concept that is entirely new to me. I have heard more than once rumours about this exact practice, that some of these bags are made elsewhere, in particular in parts of China, and that they are not made in France or in Europe anywhere, but are then stamped and sold in a way to deceive customers.
That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. You know, those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury.
However, Hermes have always claimed that their handbags are made in France.
It starts with 30 distinct cuts of leather and can take 20 hours to complete, 4 hours for just the handle. There are no manuals or cheat sheets. Artisans rely on their training and muscle memory to make every bag.
In fact, I would say that this is pushed as one of their unique selling points, with some consumers traveling across the world to purchase a bag from the Hermes flagship store.
Today we are in Paris. We just flew in. We are here because I finally got a Hermes appointment.
In response to this TikTok, many creators have made responses and or given their opinion in the comments, where they essentially share that this affirms the idea that these luxury brands are not selling anything different to what is being sold by counterfeiters on websites like DHgate and Amazon.
You're like me and you've been seeing nothing but Chinese sellers on your For You page for the last 2 days. It's starting to make you wonder, are DHgate bags the actual dupe, or have these luxury brands been duping us this entire time?
If you have been here for a while, you'd know that I recently made a video on counterfeit bags and the knock-on effect that buying fake luxury items can have. I enjoy a bit of luxury and I do not buy counterfeits. However, I am naturally inquisitive and question everything. And so today we are going to take a deep dive into the world of luxury supply chains. What is the difference between how fake bags are made and how luxury bags are made, especially if stories like Sen bags are true? And be sure to stay tuned until the end of the video because we are going to unpick all of the details to come to a more informed conclusion about what might be going on here. So I think a good question to ask at this stage is, what regulations do luxury brands adhere to? In Europe, where Hermes is registered, there are a number of rules and regulations that they are asked to follow. Some of these are self-inflicted, as in they have voluntarily committed to meet a certain standard, and some are required by law. These regulations include the Modern Day Slavery Act, which requires businesses to disclose the steps that they are taking to ensure that slavery and human trafficking are not occurring as part of their supply chains, and the European Union's Posting of Workers Directive. This directive works to ensure fair pay and working conditions for workers who are temporarily assigned to work in other EU member states, helping to regulate labour standards across borders. And you may be thinking that it's great that these regulations are in place, but how do we know whether they are in fact being followed? This is where things get a bit corporatey, but ultimately the responsibility of ensuring that a business as large as these luxury brands are complying with rules and regulations falls with senior management and the board of directors. This is done through a mechanism called corporate governance, and this is actually my strong suit, guys. I studied corporate governance at master's level and work in the industry as my day job. I think it's probably helpful for me to define what corporate governance is. So corporate governance is a system by which companies are directed and controlled. It involves a set of rules, practices and processes that ensure a company is run ethically, sustainably and effectively for the benefit of all stakeholders. And we'll call stakeholders, for the benefit of this video, customers. Right? So corporate governance is meant to work to protect customers. So corporate governance's key elements include the relationship between management, the board of directors, shareholders and other stakeholders, as well as structures that set company objectives and monitor performance. The approach taken to corporate governance can vary from country to country, but in the UK, public companies are subject to the UK Corporate Governance Code, primarily managed by the Financial Reporting Council. This code, along with the 2006 Companies Act, outlines key aspects of corporate governance, including directors' duties, shareholders' rights or customer rights, and reporting requirements. Specifically, the code focuses on leadership, accountability, remuneration, and maintaining a balanced board for transparency and ethical business conduct. In France, where Hermes is registered, corporate governance for public companies is primarily governed by the Commercial Code and the Monetary and Financial Code. Key aspects include statutory provisions, EU regulations, and non-binding corporate governance codes. So all public companies, especially in places like the UK and France, have a legal duty to follow particular regulations that relate to governance and monitoring supply chains and manufacturing and how things are made, how things are delivered, how customers' expectations are managed. Branding, all of these things would come under the remit of the board and senior management. However, where things get a little blurry is luxury brands' use of third parties. Brands utilize third-party suppliers and manufacturers within their supply chains for various aspects of production, including raw materials, components, and even some stages of manufacturing. Although these relationships are not employee-employer relationships, so it's not that these brands are hiring these third-party organizations as employees. They're in fact working on a contracting basis. So these are independent companies that are having a relationship with the brand. But even though this is the case, brands would require that these organizations provide assurances that their practices align with the company's. It would again be the responsibility of the board of directors and senior management to ensure that businesses working as part of the supply chain are meeting the company standards. So even though the third-party organizations working within the supply chain are not employees of the brand, they would have to provide documentation or policies or the results of audits to inform brands about their position and provide assurance about how they are working and ensure that their values align with the values of the company. So in this case, whoever's working within Hermes's supply chain would be needing to provide some documentation to the Hermes board about how they are running their business. Hermes say that they are committed to the in-house production of their bags, particularly in France, and they claim to manufacture 76 of their objects in their own workshops. This commitment ensures high quality and maintains their artisanal heritage, with many items crafted from start to finish by a single artisan.
Je m'appelle Manuela Boll, j'ai 49 ans et je travaille chez Hermès depuis 26 ans. Je suis directrice de production de la maroquinerie de Saint-Antoine et des ateliers du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. Animer une équipe, c'est accompagner les artisans dans les faire grandir dans les savoir-faire, les faire évoluer dans leur métier, dans leur carrière, s'occuper bien évidemment de tout ce qui les entoure et s'assurer qu'on travaille dans la sécurité, dans l'ergonomie, d'un climat aussi studieux mais serein, joyeux, collectif.
In their 2022 Universal Registration document, they outline how supply chain governance was put in place in 2021, with in particular the creation of a supply chain committee, which twice a year brings together the direct purchasing department, technical and innovation industrial affairs department, sustainable development department, and the group management of all the métiers. They also have clearly outlined a commitment to maintaining high standards with collaborators.
Hermes, according to their website, objects are produced in France, mainly produced in France, across 60 different production sites, while the network, they say, is supplemented by 12 other manufacturers in other countries, including Switzerland, Italy, the UK, the US, Portugal and Australia, however, not China.
If we hypothesize that Sen Bags is honestly making bags for Hermes, it would ultimately mean that Hermes is allegedly taking part in a racket. It would mean that their board of directors, which also includes non-executive directors whose roles are to provide independent oversight and strategic advice to the executive team, ensuring the company's interests are aligned to their customers. I of course don't know for certain what is true, but if it is, that is very wild. The global counterfeit industry as a whole is estimated to be worth $3 trillion annually. Fashion and luxury goods like clothing, shoes and leather items happen to be some of the most counterfeited products across all industries. However, although fake bags are big business, they are in fact illegal to buy and sell in most countries. And although it is unlikely that the police will be knocking down a door for one fake Louis Vuitton Neverfull, the illegality of this market means that it is not regulated at all. I do not mean this to say that some manufacturers may have rules and regulations that they choose to follow to treat their workers fairly, but by its nature there is no requirement for any commitment to ensure that this takes place, and if it does not, it is not followed up, addressed or seen by anyone really, unless they choose to. Scandals that have been seen at brands like Dior would not be a scandal for a counterfeiting organisation that is found to be exploiting their workers or lying. They'd probably just serve some time and or shut their organisation down and pop up again with a new name elsewhere.
One of the products they're making is a Dior backpack. Lorenza says her company gets €84 or around $91 for each bag. They then pay their Chinese subcontractor between $49 to $54 to do the actual work.
Invece che portare il lavoro fuori più comodo, più sotto controllo. Ma loro lavorano quante ore? Loro lavorano fino alle 8.
Possible sweatshop conditions in Italy, where workers have been paid as little as €53 to make a Dior bag that sells for as much as €2,600.
Dior says it has continuously reinforced monitoring across its supply chain and will take appropriate action when violations are unveiled.
But what do you think about this scandal? Do you think Sen Bags is telling the truth? And what do you think this means for the future of luxury?